Alright guys, Delzinski here and welcome to another WWE DVD and Blu-ray review. This time we're looking at the title, Ooh Yeah, Dig It! Macho Man, the Randy Savage story. Now this title was supplied to me by those good guys at www.dvd.co.uk, and if you check the link in the description box below, once you're done listening to this review, if you like the sound of it, you can head over there and check them out. The Randy Savage story is available now, and you can pick this title up in two available formats. You've got the DVD version, priced at £29.99, and you've got the Blu-ray version, priced at £34.99, and this title is certificated a 15. Now, just for the purpose of this review, I had the Blu-ray version. Now, the Randy Savage story. It is a real emotional roller coaster. And I've got to give WWE credit for this because sometimes their documentaries are a little bit lackluster. They don't go into the detail that they should. But this one does. And this one looks at Randy Savage's background and his wrestling career. And it looks at the man himself as well, which is great because you get a true understanding of Randy Savage, his emotions, his feelings, and the way he was portrayed within the wrestling business and outside of the wrestling business as well. Now, the title does start on a real somber note, and it actually starts at the scene of the car crash where Randy Savage did indeed pass away. And we spend time with Lanny Poffo, who is Randy Savage's younger brother. And if you didn't know who Lanny Poffo is, he was also the Genius back in the days of the WWF. Yeah, it's quite an emotional start to this title. Didn't really see that coming straight from the beginning, but they do, and it really gets you involved in this title because you know, if you're a fan of Randy Savage already, you're already connected. But if you wanted to see this title, I don't think you'd expect them to kick off this title with the scene of the car crash, and they do that, and it gets you emotionally involved in this title straight away. Now from there, they go and look at the family background of Randy Savage, and they look at how he didn't always want to go in to wrestling, and he actually wanted to be a baseball player, and you actually understand what his family was all about. His father was very obsessed with training. He actually was in the Guinness Book of World Records for having the most sit-ups. I think it was 6,033, and you'll understand why it was that number once you watch this title. Now, another great thing about this title is it doesn't just speak to WWE guys, because sometimes you get a jaded view. They actually go and talk a lot with family and friends of the Macho Man, so you get both sides of each story. You don't just get WWE guys giving their opinion, you get the family side of things as well. And Lanny is a great person to have that. Lanny Poffo, as I said earlier, Randy Savage's younger brother, he really does sum up the feelings and emotions at each point in the Macho Man's career. In addition to this as well, you actually get to speak to the Macho Man's mother, and yeah, it's quite heart-wrenching when she does talk about finding out that he passed away. I mean, wow. Yeah. So, I mean, once you watch this title, you really will understand that emotion as well. Now, as I said, he almost wanted to move into baseball originally, and he did do that. But after 4 years, he wasn't getting where he wanted to go. And the Macho Man, being the perfectionist that he is, always wanting to strive to be the best, decided that enough was enough and he would move into professional wrestling. He already had that professional wrestling background from his father, so it was almost like a given that he would move into the industry at some point. Now, what I found amazing here is something that everybody associates with the Macho Man is the intensity and the confidence. But that's something that comes across that he wasn't always that confident, because although he wanted to be the best, he did suffer from anxiety. And I never thought that for a moment that I'd find that out about the Macho Man. And with him suffering from anxiety, he lacked confidence doing promos. And I can't believe that, because you would never expect the Macho Man to have been nervous about doing a promo, but he was. And he tells Lanny this, and Lanny gives him some inspiration, and then he cut a few promos, and then it clicked. And then the Macho Man was the promo artist that we all know today, because he was an artist in those promos. Some of the stuff he created, some of the stuff he mustered up was truly amazing. And they spent a lot of time with Mean Gene Okerlund, and Mean Gene Okerlund said it was a pleasure to interview the Macho Man, because some of the work that he did was just downright crazy. I mean, sometimes he'd have his back to camera, sometimes he'd bring props, sometimes he'd just interrupt Mean Gene, sometimes he'd argue with Mean Gene, but all in all, it was just to give something different. And that's what it was. And when you think about big names in the industry, you do think of Hulk Hogan, you do think of the Ultimate Warrior, and you definitely think of the Macho Man. He was one of the most standout performers and had one of the most standout gimmicks ever to grace a wrestling ring. Now, in addition to talking about his promos and his move into WWE, we all know what a fantastic superstar he was in the ring. We get to listen about Miss Elizabeth as well, his relationship with Miss Elizabeth, which went on for years. And that's interesting, whether or not WWE guys are in the right or whether Lanny and his family are in the right, because there's a lot of mixed reaction here, whether or not the Macho Man, although he did love Elizabeth, was he a little bit too protective of her? Because there's talk that he was a bit over-controlling, and that's what the former WWE guys say, but Lanny disagrees, and he says he was just looking out for her best interests. And the Macho Man almost developed a side of jealousy when it came with Elizabeth, that if anybody, eyeballed her, or if someone tried to, hug her, or even just in storylines, like when Hulk Hogan carried her, picked her up and carried her out of the ring, that to the Macho Man made him flare up, made him kick off, made him get emotional. And as I say, that side is talked about quite in detail of how the Macho Man could just, flare up and explode if anybody went near Miss Elizabeth. So I'll leave you guys to judge that one for yourselves when you actually do watch this title. Now, I've mentioned the amazing promos, I've mentioned the in-ring work, I've mentioned Miss Elizabeth, but his attention to detail is unparalleled. I mean, this guy would map out matches to make sure everything was spot on, and he was a perfectionist. I've said that earlier. And his match with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat personifies this. He actually wrote out how the match went from the first lockup to the finish. And that just shows his dedication to the industry and wanting to give the absolute best performance for us, ultimately, the fans. And you see this through and through the title, that he always wanted to give his all. Now, the Macho Man ultimately moved into commentary in the WWE. And at first, he did this for the reasons that he didn't feel he was able to compete with some issues that were going on behind the scenes. You'll find that out in the title when you watch it. But he didn't see this as a long-term thing. But Vince McMahon did, because he was coming through with the new generation. And this led to the Macho Man going separate ways, and he did, and he went to WCW. Now, there was a bitter, well, it wasn't bitter, there was a bit of animosity left between the two, Vince and the Macho Man, and I think this maybe just festered and developed for the rest of the period of time, because, why isn't the Macho Man in the Hall of Fame? I don't know, but I think it has to happen soon. I really want to see the Macho Man be put in the Hall of Fame. If WWE are willing to do this title, they should be willing to put him in. It's bizarre to me that other people have got in the Hall of Fame, but the Macho Man isn't. Now, that's enough of that, but let's talk about him moving to WCW. So, in WCW, he had to reinvent himself quite a few times. We saw that with The Madness, and we did indeed also understand his relationship with Hulk Hogan, because the title does cover his relationship with Hogan quite a lot. These two were always at the same level, and Randy Savage at some points overtook Hogan. But then Hogan would come back, there'd be level pegging, and really when you have two personas and two people with egos this huge, they were bound to collide, and they did on numerous occasions. And Miss Elizabeth as well also was the bulk of those issues. I mean, a lot of jealousy was involved there. But in WCW, again, him and Hogan didn't always see eye to eye, but they managed to iron that out. And numerous superstars talk about the back and forths between Savage and Hogan. Now, after his WCW time, they talk about the passing of Miss Elizabeth and how Savage handled that. Then we look at Randy Savage, finding his first love, because he actually decided to step away, and outside of the ring, his life just became so much more positive. Because, as I say, he did have his demons here and there, but the Macho Man was almost picking up his life again and having an amazing time. And then, unfortunately, the car crash happened. And you again revisit that at the end of the documentary. And as I say, guys, this one is a real emotional roller coaster. It's great to see the highs, and it's interesting to see the lows, but ultimately it's sad that the Macho Man is not with us today. I'd say this documentary is a very, very good watch, albeit an emotional one. I enjoyed the Paul Heyman documentary. I've enjoyed The Ultimate Warrior as well, where they reflect on it. But I think this one has a lot of detail behind it, and that's something that I'm grateful for with the WWE. Sometimes, as I say, they don't always do that, but with the Randy Savage story, they definitely do. So guys, the documentary alone is worth the purchase. Now, in addition to the first disc, you've got some actual matches as well. So you get a list. I'm just going to run down the guys that the Macho Man goes up against. I'm just going to give you a few names. So those matches that you're going to get matches between Rowdy Roddy Piper, the Immortal Hulk Hogan, the Ultimate Warrior, his feud with Diamond Dallas Page, and of course, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Now, on top of this, there are some Blu-ray exclusives, and I'm just going to give you a rundown of those as well. You've got a WWE Championship match. It's a Lumberjack match between Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan at Madison Square Garden. Excuse me. You've also got as well, the winner is the King of WWE, Randy Savage versus Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and that's again Madison Square Garden. That's from 1989. We've got a WCW Saturday Night event where Randy Savage, Sting versus the Blue Bloods, and that's from 1995. We've got a match from Nitro, Randy Savage versus Booker T. And then, as well, we look at some of the stories from the Macho Man. So that's interesting as well, and it's very nice to have those additions on the Blu-ray. So guys, all in all, I would say that this is a fantastic title to watch. I love the documentaries. I love understanding the career of a character. And I think WWE got this one right. Albeit there is a bit of controversy in terms of why, when WCW went out of business, why didn't the Macho Man ever move to the WWE? It's still, as I say, that sort of animosity still brewed between Vince and the Macho Man, and even Triple H as well. And will he ever make the Hall of Fame? I mean, I'll leave that to you guys. Let me know via the comments box below. If you've already picked up this title, I'd love to hear your views. If you haven't picked up this title already and you do purchase it, let me know your views. And if you're going to purchase this one, let me know your favourite Macho Man Randy Savage moment. It'd be great to hear from you guys. And as I say, this title was thoroughly enjoyable, albeit a very emotional one. And on a final note, I would say that I just really do wish the Macho Man was still with us today, because I still think he'd have a hell of a lot to give to the wrestling business. So all that's left to be said, guys, is please rate, comment and subscribe. I've left a link in the description box below to this title, so if you do want to pick this one up, you can head over to WWE DVD and check them out and put in your purchase right now. And this is Delzinski for another WWE DVD and Blu-ray review, signing out.